I was actually on a plane going to deliver an event in Florida. And we had heard rumblings that things were, really moving towards not necessarily lockdown, because I don't think those words were ever uttered at that point. But the WHO had just declared that the coronavirus was a pandemic. And that was the night before I flew.
From Six Story, I'm your producer, Diana Hong, and you're listening to Rev Up Your Potential with Hilda Gann, the show where we talk with entrepreneurs in Toronto about the stories behind their success and the lessons they've learned along the way. And now your host, Hilda Gann.
Today I have with me Malak Sidky. She is the founder and president of Healthcare Event Planning and the creator of Healthy Corporate Canada. Welcome, Malak.
Thank you very much, Gilda. Happy to be here.
If you could put into your own words, 2 or 3 sentences, what is it that you do?
So we plan all kinds of events, from conferences to fundraisers, union conventions, wellness retreats, fashion shows, you name it, we do it.
So how long have you been doing this for?
Oh gosh, we're going back many years now. First started planning events in the early 90s.
Wow, good. So you're an event planner and all kinds. So I'm sure you've got a few stories you can tell us. Perhaps you can start from the beginning, giving us some kind of highlights into your life that really led you to where you are today. It can be things that you did in your childhood or growing up, going to school, your first jobs that led you to say, hey, I want to do this. This is what I'm going to do. So tell us how you got involved in building this business.
It's a great story, actually. So I was a biochemist. I graduated at McGill University in biochemistry, and I did a few years of research. And then after a while, it just didn't feel right. It wasn't me. My personality wasn't coming out. And a lot of the researchers, I think, were very quiet, the ones that I was surrounded with. So I was looking around for jobs within McGill because I recognized it was a great university and there might be some different options for me. And lo and behold, there was a job in alumni relations. And alumni relations is a branch of the university that deals with planning events for either current graduates or former graduates. So things like Town and Gown, which was a huge event for 5,000 graduating students, or Reunion Weekend, where everybody sort of descends onto campus. And there's all kinds of events for engineering alumni to medical alumni. So this was actually a very interesting first step. This was a terrific team that was put together. They knew what they were doing. The events were events that happened on an annual basis. So the team was seasoned, they knew what they were doing. And I came in, full of energy and learned from all the people around me. So that was a terrific way to start in events.
I mean, there must have been things that you did along the way in your past that said, I really like doing this, or I had been doing these kinds of things for my friends. Were there things?
Yeah, there were. Of course there were. I mean, my parents, I organized like an anniversary party for them. I did surprise parties for my mom when she retired. And I always liked that. But, in my head, Hilda, I was a scientist. So I didn't really think that I could parlay that into a career. And I think we have to remember, not that I'm giving away my age, but when I was, a youngster, there weren't event planning programs offered at the college level. So it's not like I could have taken courses in it or anything like that. There may have been marketing classes, and I did take marketing and in a certificate program, and I loved it. And I think that's kind of when the tide started to turn. I didn't know exactly, but no, actually, I did fall upon it. I was very lucky that I had a friend, she was in gymnastics, and I was walking down the street one day and I told her, I'm not so happy in research. And she said, Malak, there's a great opportunity. I'll recommend you. You're full of energy. You would be perfect for this type of field. So that's how it came to be. And no looking back after that, I knew that events were in my blood. Moved to Toronto and started a master's program in health admin. But there was an opportunity as a student to apply for a job called a business manager job. And that job entailed organizing several events a year for that department. And I took to it very easily because I had worked in a university setting planning events. And here I was in another university setting, and I was easily able to get into it very quickly. And this was a student position. But what happened is I was very ambitious at the time. And I thought, you know what? Why don't I just talk to the people and ask them, my bosses, rather than hiring someone every 2 years and having to train them? Why don't you just keep me on? I know I'm doing a good job, or at least I think I am. And I convinced them to keep me on. And so I worked with them for another 8 years until finally they had a full-time position within the university. But during those, subsequent 8 years, I did events for them, which led to working with the Canadian College of Health Leaders because I had joint events with them. And it just started, snowballing.
I love how you said, I was a biochemist, researcher. What made you go from there to, event planning, which seems a more social thing versus a scientific based thing?
Well, it all comes back to what happened in high school. In high school, my guidance counselor said to all of us, science is here, business is here, and then arts are here. So I always felt, given this guidance that if I had good marks, I should go into science. And I was always interested in science. So off I went into science. Didn't take into account, as you say, my personality, my likes and dislikes. And so even though I like science and I found it interesting, many people find things interesting, but they don't necessarily go into them. I never really felt like I belonged in that industry. So no surprise that I wasn't extremely happy doing that job, right? Because I did feel that there was a disconnect between my personality and having to be this serious person wearing a lab coat and pipetting and not talking. And that almost killed me, honestly.
But you stayed in healthcare.
Did. And, I think part of it was I kind of felt like I had a vested interest. I had already invested so many years in having my biochemistry degrees, then another 3-4 years in doing the research. So I thought, what could I do where I could parlay my science skills, but do something a little bit more interesting and relevant to what, my interests are. And I thought, why don't I go into health? And actually, I got a job as one of the first jobs I got right after leaving research was in a hospital. So there was that clinical aspect. And I met someone who had done her master's degree in health admin. And she convinced me, you're smart, Malak, go and do your master's. It'll open up many doors for you. So again, I was advised to do something, which was a good thing. And I actually, totally enjoyed that degree much more than the biochemistry degree. And because I stayed in healthcare, eventually it dawned on me, wait a second, I have something of a winning recipe here. I can pick a niche market. Why should I just do any kind of event? Or why should I, let's say, be a wedding planner? Nothing wrong with that. But why should I be a wedding planner when I could specialize in healthcare events? And I look legitimate. I'm a scientist, plus I have a master's, plus I've done all these events at the university level. And who did I do them for? The health admin department in a university. So it just made sense to go niche. And it's a decision I don't regret because, as I said, I've planned all kinds of events, but the majority of my clients or, my ideal client would be in the healthcare field. Do I turn away somebody who asks me to do an event outside of the field? Absolutely not. I just planned a climate change conference, but I seem to attract people in healthcare because I have a track record in healthcare.
I loved how you said, I found a niche, and you've been in the business since the 90s, as you said. In those days, people didn't necessarily focus on niche. Like today's buzzword is find a niche, find a narrow field and be really good at that. And that will help you build a business. If you're trying to be here and there and all over the place, then
Right.
You're constantly trying to market everything and nobody knows what you're good at. So whatever. So it's almost like you learn to niche down way before it became something that we should all do if we wanted to be successful in what we're doing.
Yeah, and that was, it didn't dawn upon me that I was doing it. It just one referral led to another. And so it was very helpful. Now, of course, along the way, as I mentioned, there have been people who've come up to me and asked me to do events for them. And depending on where I was at in my career, I didn't necessarily turn them down because let's say I needed the business or I wanted to grow my business. And I'm still toying with the idea of having like a parent company called, let's say, for lack of a better name, eventplanning.com, of which healthcare event planning is one of the subsidiary companies. And that may still happen. I'm not sure yet. So I'm kind of toying with that. I have received some feedback recently from some innovative business people who have told me, that might not be a bad idea for you. Maybe you should explore it. So I'm not 100% sure. I'm not ruling anything out. But for now, yes, I'm pretty niche.
Pretty niche. Good. And the name, what made you come up with your name, Healthcare Event Planning?
Well, that is something in of itself. The name of my original company was Sidky Healthcare Consulting, because I did consulting work. I did some project management, mostly events, but sometimes a project would lead to an event. But Sidky is my last name. And then I went to a couple of business webinars, and they were saying never call your company after your last name unless you have someone who is, in your family tree who's going to take it over, right? Nothing wrong with that. But if there's no one underneath you that's a Sidky, who's going to buy your company with that name? And so brand yourself differently. So I was chatting with a girlfriend of mine. She's in real estate. And I was telling her, I have to change my name. I don't know what to change it to. And so we were just brainstorming. She says, okay, so event planning has to be in the name because you're planning events. And right now it's not in the name. It's consulting, which is so general. And you do a lot of healthcare events. What about healthcare event planning? And that's honestly how it came to be.
Well, there's no mistaking what you do.
No. And what's interesting, Hilda, it's actually got me a lot of business. And I'll tell you like a funny story. I had a client in New York who was looking for an event planner. He's a nurse practitioner. He was looking for an event planner. So he typed in event planner. And then he was like, well, it'd be kind of advantageous if they were in healthcare because they'd understand our industry and some of our concerns. So he put in healthcare. And then, of course, those were the 4 magic words. I was number 1 in the SEO analytics. And this has happened time and time again. Nova Scotia Department of Health was looking for somebody. They told me a similar story. Another client who's in the cannabis field was looking for a health planner, and it came up. So it not just comes up in the first page, it's number 1. So it's like a gold mine. I love the name because, as you say, it captures it perfectly, but it also makes it very easy for people to search and to find me.
It sounds like a lot of things have been, they've just evolved in a really natural, positive way. What are some of those things that might have been a struggle for you along the way?
Well, what's interesting? I think as a entrepreneur, it is a bit of a lonely journey. It's not like you work as part of a big team. You go into work every day and there's a whole bunch of people that you could chat with. I found it very lonely at times. And I also found that even though I loved planning my events, there were some aspects of my business that I didn't really understand and know how to scale, for example. And so one of the things that, I certainly found it challenging because I couldn't really talk to anybody who was doing similar things. I don't know why I couldn't find them, but I wasn't finding them. And then one day, I guess a couple of key things happened. One is at the time I was living in York Region in Woodbridge, and I heard about some startup grants that were happening at the provincial level. And the city had a call that they asked people to come in and attend a couple of information sessions. And I went in, and one of the first things they said to me is, do you have a business plan? And I had a shell of a plan, but not as extensive. And so we worked with that, and we did a SWOT analysis. And one of them was, so who are your competitors? One of the questions that was being asked. So in order to see, is this an opportunity or a threat? And I said, I don't know who my competitors are. Like, I've never come across these people. And they're like, well, you must have competitors. I mean, other people must be planning events. And I said, no, I'm assuming yes. And then a few weeks later, of course, this is on my mind now. Like, how come I don't know who's doing events in my field? I went to a conference, and at the conference, there was a trade show floor, and I stumbled upon a booth where the title was CANSPEP, Canadian Society of Professional Event Planners. And I thought, oh, wow, there's actually an organization. So I
So
walked up.
what year is this so people know? What year are we talking?
This is like maybe only 5 years ago.
Oh,
Like
okay.
ridiculous as it sounds, it was only about 5 years ago.
Because I was wondering if it was like in the early days when Google was still in its infancy and people didn't know to kind of type it up or anything. Okay, go ahead.
I mean, you're right. I could have Googled it, but I had a pretty extensive network of people that I knew. And I guess I thought I was unique. As ridiculous as this sounds, I really thought I was unique. Now, I'll just, elaborate on the story a little bit further. So I went up to this booth. I talked to one of the people who was there, and she said, we're event planners, and more importantly, we're eventpreneurs. We own and operate our own company. So we don't just plan events. We're not working, let's say, for a board of tourism or a mining company, and we're planning events for the mining company. We own our businesses. So I'm like, well, that's like me. So they said, okay, so why don't you join our association and you'll learn not how to be a better event planner. We figure you're at the top of your game and you know what you're doing, but really how to be a better business person. How to stop maybe doing every single thing, including your bookkeeping and all of those tasks, and maybe diversify, maybe hire a virtual assistant and scale up. Maybe you want to have 10 people under you, not just you. And I thought, yes, that would be great if I had people that could help me out. So that's how it started. Now, interestingly enough, once I joined that organization, I did find 2 people in all of Canada that do exactly what I do. So I don't think I was that far off. There are 2 people, again, who are part of the association. There could be others who are not part, who didn't hear about it like I did, but there's 2 women, one in Ottawa and one in London, Ontario, who do very similar things to what I do. They plan events in the health and scientific and medical community exclusively. And then I met other people who do all kinds of events, and sometimes they have healthcare clients, but most of the time they have corporate clients, business clients, etc. I mean, their clients might be, let's say, Microsoft or Google, but they do a few healthcare events if, again, they come their way. So I don't think I was that far off in terms of not knowing exactly who my competitors are. However, I found that there are generalists, people who do all kinds of events, who could be my competitors.
Right, for sure, for sure. But if you're doing it niche, you have that much more edge ahead of them because that's your specialty, right? For sure,
Correct.
for sure. So when did you actually turn your idea of event planning to a entrepreneurial business? I know you said you worked for McGill and you worked for the U of T to do these things, but tell us the story about when you said, okay, I'm doing this for people. I want to do it for myself now. When did that happen, and what was that catalyst that said, I can do this. I can be on my own making money doing this?
So I was always making money doing this, but I think I didn't have the confidence to open up my own business. So when I was business manager at U of T, I was being paid to put on these events. I wasn't under someone's payroll. They were paying me every quarter a certain amount to do these. So in a way, and I had to open up a company and I had to register and get a GST number. So all that was there.
Okay.
But I didn't say, okay, I'm now going to quit my full-time job and just focus on this. I'm going to get a website and all these things that you do when you are serious about being a full-time entrepreneur. I always had a job in the background. So I was sort of doing 2 jobs at once throughout the years. So at one point I was working at a pharmaceutical company, for example, but I was doing my events on the side. And I guess after a while, after I became a mom and I had other, family responsibilities, I found it exhausting to keep changing gears from the full-time worker to the part-time entrepreneur to the mom. And at one point, I think it was in, like to say, 2006, that I thought, no, I need to do something different. I need to just take the plunge. And of course, this happens with conversations with your spouse and, can we do this? And should I take a chance? And should I go all in? I mean, all I had honestly, Hilda, were business cards. That's it. I didn't have a website. I didn't have e-commerce on my website because I didn't have a website. So I didn't have flyers. I didn't have, banners. I didn't have any of those things. It was just cheap and cheerful. Go out there, do the event, come back. And I never even thought, how can I grow this? Because I was exhausted. I was doing another full-time job. But when I finally took the plunge, I realized I can do this. And if I focus solely on my business, then it will grow. Then I can apply for grants. Then I can, start thinking of having a website and translating it into French and doing all of that stuff, because suddenly I had time to invest in the business. Whereas before I was just planning the events. I wasn't looking at the business as a whole. So that was my mistake, because I think in a way, if I had gotten started sooner with some of these marketing initiatives, like having a LinkedIn account and, an Instagram account and all of these, then I might have been, the rise might have been faster. It wasn't. And, maybe I took the time to hone my craft. That's my story. I mean, we all have different ways of how we get there, but I eventually got there.
But I think the reality is you were working full time. You had children who were growing up, and you were doing this thing that you enjoyed to do. And that's probably why you did it. But yeah, it got to a point where you said, time out, enough's enough. I think I need to figure what to do. And obviously seriously enough to want to have this business. Did you go in with eyes kind of wide open or a little shuttered? Because you said, I didn't have a business plan. So were there things that you, in hindsight, said, I did it, I was courageous, but in hindsight, these are things I didn't know that I should have had a little bit of understanding of, whether it's marketing or finance or whatever. Were there some of those things that in hindsight you said, should I have known a little bit more about that?
Well, yes, absolutely. I mean, I guess if you had to classify, you'd say this was my side hustle and I decided to make it my main business. The good thing is I didn't really invest like in bricks and mortar or anything like that. I mean, I had everything that I needed. I had a computer, I had my knowledge base, I had my contacts, my referrals, but it would have been much faster had I developed a business plan early on, had I looked around the marketplace and figured out who are my competitors, and had I known really how to write a very good proposal. Because, a lot of the times I was lucky in that people came to me and said, hey, can you plan an event? And it still happens. It happened yesterday night. I had another former client who just reached out to me and asked me to do another event for them now that they're in a new place of work. But to rely on that is not a good thing, right? I mean, how do you scale if you don't know how to write a good proposal? Or you think you do, but you find out that, there's certain elements that are missing. So I, said at one point, I've never really had to prospect that much. Well, because I always was busy. But there's being busy and then there's being able to scale. And for me to be able to scale, I had to take that chance and say, okay, I need someone to do my website. I need someone to update it on a regular basis. I need someone to do my social media. I'd like to get some event interns from the local colleges. So that, I guess, stifled my growth because I didn't have the help that I needed. And there's only so much of you to go around, right?
Yep.
If you're doing everything from the little bit of prospecting to the accounting to the actual logistics involved with putting on events, then there's no way that you can grow. And that was, again, going to the CanSPEP educational sessions where people before me had tried the same thing and they said, no, it doesn't work. You can't be excellent at everything. Yeah. And you're going to be putting off certain tasks that you're not so excellent as, and you'll find that you're stagnating. You'll be busy, but you might not necessarily be making six figures. Do you want to make six figures or beyond? Then this is kind of the recipe that you have to follow. So it was nice because I got some mentors who were able to really guide me and really contribute to my success.
Do you have advice for people who are, you mentioned the word, I got mentors. What's your advice on, do I get a coach? Do I get a mentor? Do I wing it? What would you in hindsight share?
What I would share was getting a business coach and mentors. So they have two different roles, I feel. A business coach is someone to provide you some guidance and to really push you forward. So when I first started with my business coach about 3.5 years ago, one of the first things she said is, so how satisfied are you with your business and your different revenue streams? And my only revenue stream at the time was events. And she said, what else do you want to do? Maybe write a book, or what are you thinking? And I said, I really would like to teach. I would love to teach. I've been, planning events for a very long time. I'd like to give back. So, okay, and what's holding you back from teaching? Well, I'm researching some colleges. And she said, there's nothing to research. All colleges are the same. They're mandated by the Ministry of Education. So whether you're planning events at Seneca or Humber or Centennial, it doesn't matter. What you do is you look for your closest college. That's what you do. Stop wasting your time. And she was a very lovely woman, but man, she was direct. And so she said, who do you know that could get you into the colleges? Because it's a hard nut to crack. And these are plum positions, and you would really need someone to champion you. Yes, of course, you can apply on their websites, but if you have someone championing you, it's better. And sure enough, I had someone championing me. And within 3 or 4 months, I got my first teaching position at Centennial College. So if it wasn't for her, it would be something that I would have put off. I don't know if I would have ever done it. I think I found the whole process very intimidating. When you run your own show, to suddenly become an employee is a little bit, it takes some getting used to. So, but I love teaching, and now I can give back to other generations. And the other benefit to teaching, other than it's a nice revenue stream, it's a steady source of income, is that it gives you legitimacy, right? So when you're talking to your clients and you're telling them that you're teaching future generations of event planners, that goes a long way into building your credibility as, a thought leader in this space.
You talked about the idea of giving back. That sounds like it's important to you. Are there other ways that you are giving back?
Yes, absolutely. So my motto, and it's on the back of my business card, is the event planner that cares. So, and that could be seen as various ways. I care about making your event a success, but I also care in general about humanity. And a lot of the events that I'm involved with are for charities, or if they're not, then there is a component of it where we give back to charitable organizations, either as part of the proceeds from ticket sales, or there's a silent auction component. And definitely it's what makes me happy, right? To be able to say, it's great to be successful, but it's much nicer to share in that success.
So is that on your website, Malak? Like, where do you
Yeah.
identify to people, to clients, that you are a carer and a giver?
Yeah, so it's on my website. It's also in the proposals that I do. So every proposal that goes out to the client, we talk about our values. And I think that's very important. I mean, it's not for everyone, but for me, I feel, especially that I'm in the health field, I like to donate to health-related charities.
That's cool. That's cool. I know when my husband and I had our engineering company, we got to a point to say we're doing well and we want to give back. And our idea of giving back is always give back to your community.
Yes.
And the community is your geographical community, but it's also your industry community. So, we thought of ways to give back to our university, to engineering, and to our local community, and chose United Way as our charity of choice. So I think that's really good. You talked about the word scaling. So, we've talked about your early years in building and not so early years, because it was 2005 when you thought, I need a business plan and this will help. Were there different stages of scaling? Because I know we introduced you as the creator of Healthy Corporate Canada. So that's a more recent scale, but are there other scales? So let's do it more in chronological order.
Yeah, so for the longest time, I was, just the face of the business, and I was the business. I was anything and everything related to driving the business. It was all me. And when I started teaching, I realized that I could tap into a pool of interns who could help me. And depending on the college that I was teaching at, I had access to different interns over the years. And some of those interns I ended up, mentoring and coaching. And then the relationship ended when they graduated and they found other jobs. Others, I took on board and they became part of my staff. And then they eventually left and went on to do something else, but then they came back on a contract basis. And now I have 2 other interns. So in addition to my interns, I also have partnerships with other planners where we co-bid on projects and we work together on those projects and we just share the proceeds. I also have, as I had mentioned before, someone who does my social media, who does my newsletter, my LinkedIn, my Instagram. So this is sort of a, a part-time contract employee. And also I have someone who does my website. And I don't know what I would do without all these people to help me, because I'm not great at doing updates, but I know an update needs to be done. I send it off to my team and it gets done. So, I think if you figure out those tasks, not that you don't necessarily like to do, but that are taking a lot of your time and they are important, but they need to be done. And you can farm those out in whatever, formula works for you, whether it's a part-time person, a full-time person, a contractor, and then let you do the actual running of the business. That works a lot better. And that's the only way that you can scale. That's the only way that you can, let's say, for example, you have a proposal that falls on your door and it's due in 4 days, but you're servicing an event. You're actually at an event in Florida and this pops into your inbox. How do you do that if you don't have help? You won't be able to apply for that. You won't be able to submit a bid for that because you're just too busy. There's only one of you. But if there's 3 of you, right? If you have that help, then you can apply for that and then maybe you'll get it. And also another thing I found, which was very important, is it's all about perception. If you have, an organization that wants to hire you for a very large event and they see there's only one person, they're not going to hire you because they're going to think, how's she going to handle this?
Yeah, you can't be in 5 locations at the same time in a big conference center, right?
Yeah, that's one aspect. But the other aspect is, what if it's a really big conference, like an international conference in 16 countries? Then what? What do you do? So what I found was really nice about CanSpep is I could partner with people and say, hey, there's this big bid coming up. Let's partner. Let's bid on this and let's see if we can get it. And then if we need more people, like it's very easy to hire people to be on site at an event. But what about the months and weeks leading up to the event? Who's going to carry out all these different logistics? And so if you think about big events like TIFF, Pan Am Games, Olympics, you have teams of 30, 40, 50 people, not just one little planner. And so again, if someone is looking at your website and they just see it's you, they may not hire you. They may not have the confidence to proceed and say, well, what are you going to do when it gets really busy? And then wait for your answer. They'll just make that instant decision. No, she's not big enough. But as they look on your website and you have our team section and you have a listing of all these different employees, they'll think, oh, okay, well, that's great. So she knows she has a graphic designer. She's got a photographer. She's got a videographer. She's got a virtual assistant. She's got an intern. Oh, okay. So I feel confident that this team can handle it.
So I know that you've recently scaled and that during COVID, you really had to make some pivots. So maybe you can share a little bit about that.
Of course. So, the event planning industry was really very severely affected by COVID because if governments tell you that you can't meet, people can't meet, and events were all about people meeting, then it's going to be a huge shift. Now, virtual events have been occurring for quite a long time. I've been planning webinars for over 12 years now. So I was very comfortable with some of the technologies that were out there, Adobe Connect and GoToMeeting and, obviously Zoom. But I wasn't using them in a day-to-day basis because most of my events, I would say 75% of them were live events. And so I felt that one of the things that would be important when it became apparent that the pandemic was going to be sort of a long-term process was for me to go back to school and get my digital event strategist designation. And this designation has been around for about 6 years now. So it's just suddenly become very popular for the reasons I mentioned above. But I just thought it was very important for me to go back and get that designation so that A, I could learn, and B, I could then show my clients that I know what I'm doing in the virtual sphere. And that was very important. So I have pivoted. And of course, I've done many virtual events now, not just webinars, but longer events, 3, 4, 5-day medical events, environmental conferences, business events. And I really understand how to make events, virtual events, engaging because of what I learned in the course that I took, which was a 7-week intensive course, but also because you learn more by doing. So, and all the, different tricks and whatnot. So I am marketing myself now as a virtual Zoom concierge, as well as an event planner. So if you're looking for me to plan everything from A to Z, I can do that. If you just want me to go on site and help you with tech support, launching polls, breakout rooms, etc., I can do that too. And then I guess another idea, because you know how entrepreneurs, we're full of ideas.
I like the word, how you call it, a digital concierge, right? The concierge means that I can just come to my event and not worry that there's going to be digital hiccups. Well, yes. I can worry, but I know that somebody will be focusing on that while I focus on my content, my delivery, my connection with my audience, right? So yeah, I love that. So go ahead, tell me about your other idea.
Well, the other idea is I've been doing my own signature wellness retreats for about 6 years now. And so I've gotten to know many practitioners, whether they're fitness gurus or yogis or social workers or physiotherapists, nutritionists. And I thought,
this is an annual event that you do.
Correct.
Live, right? Where yes. all of these healthcare practitioners are there. I just want to help people understand what that is.
So it's a retreat. So essentially people come to this annual event and they're looking for a day of self-care and pampering. And so over the years, I've built relationships with various providers because I don't want to do the same event twice. So I want people to look forward to a new event with a twist. Sometimes the events were held at the Old Mill in Toronto. Sometimes they were held at a farm in King City. And every time the content was different, but the focus was always the same. It was on mind, body, and soul. And so last year, for the first time, I decided, well, if we can't meet live, let me put this event on virtually. So we had a virtual retreat last September. I'm having another retreat coming up this April. But I guess because I was thinking, not everybody can partake in a one-day event. And I think businesses are feeling the stress of people working from home. It's a bit disconnected. You're not meeting and having water cooler conversations. So, maybe there is a possibility there to launch some programming where the practitioners could come into a corporation or an organization and deliver wellness in a virtual setting, kind of in a lunch and learn type format. So I did a lot of behind the scenes market research. Is there a need for it? And certainly, I guess, in some of the larger corporations, they may already have wellness programs. So I decided to focus on small and medium-sized businesses. And I had conversations with my practitioners and to see, what's out there. Are they currently maybe delivering it themselves? And none of the people I was speaking to really had a vast clientele. Some of them had gone into corporate before. They did have a bit of experience with that, but a lot of them were delivering it to lay people. So that's why I thought, well, I think there is a need, and Healthy Corporate Canada, or in French, Entreprise en Santé Canada, was born. And currently we're out there delivering unique and relevant wellness programming to employees and helping them, cope with the pandemic. I think it's very important because there is a dearth of programming. There's a lot of EAP programming, but by then it's too late. You're already in crisis mode and you're reaching out. And whereas our focus is really all about prevention.
I remember you sharing that earlier with me, saying that one of the things you do, you want to make it national, right? And that for some people, they may decide that the service they want is to do it over lunch.
Right.
Right. And then you've gone ahead and share what you've done for those clients who purchase one of your programs and they want to do a lunch. Tell us what you did to make that happen.
Oh yeah, so there's quite a few packages that I have available. So some people, for example, they have shift work, so they can't do it during lunch, but they're looking to purchase the program, which is all recorded, and the client has access to the recordings. If they choose to do it during lunch hour, one of the programs, the Platinum program, actually offers lunch being delivered to the employees' homes. So I've partnered with catering companies across Canada, and essentially what we can provide to people is a nice catered lunch that is available during the lunch and learn. Now, obviously, if the lunch and learn is a yoga session, that's not the one that we're going to couple with the lunch. We'll probably couple it with the lunch where someone is, for example, speaking about nutrition or healthy sleep habits, etc. And it's just a nice perk. Wouldn't it be nice when your employer is saying, listen, I care about you, I've invested in wellness programming, and this is something that you can look forward to. Not only are you getting the education, but at 12:30, your doorbell's going to ring and there's going to be a beautiful catered lunch for you. So I think that speaks volumes when employers can do that for their employees.
Thank you. And I think it speaks volumes for you because this is an example of what I envision as concierge.
Mm.
that not only is it concierge, you didn't just say, okay, we'll just order from the local pizzeria or the local sub sandwich place. What you did was you sourced out people in the various locations that you believe you'll be doing your business.
Right.
So it shows a lot of extensive marketing connections on your part to do this.
Some of it, I did have established relationships with suppliers, right? I mean, catering is part of any event. So some of it was new to me because I was going into markets that I've never necessarily catered before. So like Barrie, for example, I never have done an event in Barrie, but suddenly I find myself needing to source a caterer in Barrie. So I built up this extensive database of practitioners and an extensive database of caterers, married the two together, and the rest is history.
Cool. I want you to share one more anecdote that we talked about before we had this interview, and that was the day you heard the announcement that Ontario, where you're based, shut down, and what that meant to you. You kind of highlighted that we were in a business where it was live, and all of a sudden we weren't in a business, and then it took months to pick up virtual. Share that story that you shared with me when you first found out that we were going into lockdown.
I was actually on a plane going to deliver an event in Florida. And we had heard rumblings that things were, really moving towards not necessarily lockdown, because I don't think those words were ever uttered at that point. But the WHO had just declared that the coronavirus was a pandemic. And that was the night before I flew. I had been checking in with my client, and we were putting on a cannabis conference in Florida. And he had said to me, you know what? Nobody's canceled the event. None of the sponsors have walked away. I haven't heard anything whatsoever on our social media handles. No one has emailed personally. So we're going ahead. Okay. So I'm on the plane. The plane is taxiing when my phone rings. And I was just about to shut it off, which is why it was in my hands. And I see it's my client. So I'm thinking, okay, this is important. Let me pick up. And he basically said, Malak, we're canceling the event tomorrow. And I was in a state of shock. So even though I had kind of been expecting it in the days leading up to it, because we'd had conversations pretty much daily and he had reassured me that everything was fine, I was very shocked. So he asked me if I could get off the plane. And I said, no, I can't. My luggage is on and we're taxiing. It's not possible. So he said, well, I'll pay for you to just call some of the people, the speakers in particular. I can handle the delegates and I'll put it on our website, etc. But I want you to call the speakers and make sure no one is flying in. It was the local event in Florida. Most of the practitioners, the physicians were from the Florida area. So it wasn't that bad, but there was one physician who was coming in from the Bahamas. And so he said, please just contact them in order of priority. Let them know that the event has been canceled because WHO has declared a pandemic and we don't feel comfortable anymore. And then once you get to the hotel, talk to them, let them know that the event is canceled and start undoing the event. Then we had shipped tons of stuff, registration labels and computers and banners and all kinds of things, and start shipping them back. So I had to basically undo the event that was going to be held literally, 36 hours later. And I was in crisis management mode. I mean, it was something I'd never done in my life before. I was on a plane and I just couldn't wait to get off the plane. It was quite the experience. And it only dawned on me then, wow, my life as I know it is about to change.
Yeah. I love the story that you shared about, how you converted from a live event to a virtual mode, the fact that you determined that you need to have a cutting edge and you decided to get that digital, what's it called?
Digital event strategist.
Digital event strategist and call it a digital concierge, right? Like these kinds of examples that you shared are really, really helpful. And to share some of those struggles that caused you to pivot that way, I really, really appreciate what you've shared today. So what's next? What's happening next in your life? And share a little bit about that before we wrap up.
Well, I'd really like to bring Healthy Corporate Canada to Quebec. So because I'm bilingual and a lot of my practitioners are bilingual, we really feel that this is a market that we'd like to explore. And in addition, I don't see the reason why Healthy Corporate Canada can't go, across the border. So maybe another step would be to offer our services in the States, in which case we won't call it Healthy Corporate Canada.
That was my thought.
Yeah. No, for sure. But we can certainly have different branches because in the virtual world, you can offer this anywhere. Like there's no reason why I can't offer it in Kazakhstan or Australia, other than, there's going to be some time change issues, but there always are time change issues when you're doing virtual events. So stay tuned. That's all I can say is stay tuned.
Well, it's been a delight to have you, Malak. How can people get a hold of you?
Oh, easy. So I'm on LinkedIn under my name, Malak Sidky. And on Instagram, I'm at Healthcare Event Planning. And of course, you could check out my website at www.healthcareeventplanning.com.
Well, thank you again for being our guest today and sharing us so many information nuggets, I call it, that will help us as entrepreneurs figure out how we want to do things and to show us how you pivoted on, during that very difficult time for COVID and that particular event again, which I wanted to share, of you being on the plane, having to figure out what to do and go into crisis mode. So thank you for sharing your journey with us.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Well, it was a delight. And I'd like to thank the people who took the time to listen. If you like the podcast with Malak, there are others. We want to tell a story. We want to help you understand other people's journeys so that you don't feel alone, that you can learn from them. So thank you for joining our podcast, Rev Up Your Potential, and stay safe during these difficult times. Thank you.